I'm Hope.
And I'm Ian.
And this is A Couple Reviews.
Welcome to episode 3.
We're going to start off by talking about Midsommar by Ari Aster. And we saw the original theatrical version in theaters. And then we went back in to see the director's cut. Because I really enjoyed this film. And I wanted to see the difference because I had read that it was worth the change. It was worth going again if you really liked it.
Yeah, I didn't particularly want to see it again, but I did want to see what they added for the director's cut. Because, if you want anxiety, go ahead and watch this movie. It'll give you anxiety.
Pretty much watch anything by Ari Aster and you'll have anxiety issues.
Pretty much have a bad time.
As always, spoilers will abound. I enjoyed this film, and I think you should watch it. If you're not into horror movies, it's not very scary. It only has really one gory moment. It's just very anxiety-filled. Heavy. So if you can sit through the other things and you think you'll be okay with some anxiety movie, it's very good. Spoiler alert for my rating later. Let's talk about the film. A little bit of background. We saw Hereditary, as did a lot of people. We're really big horror movie buffs, so it was getting incredible reviews, so we knew we needed to watch it. I enjoyed Hereditary, but I liked Midsommar more. I'm not a huge fan of the ending of Hereditary.
I think the ending to Hereditary was good. I liked it. I think I liked Midsommar a little bit more
I like
as
Midsommar
well.
More, yeah.
But I don't have the same complaint about the ending of Hereditary that Hope has.
And sometimes we do have different opinions on stuff. Isn't that cool?
Shocking.
So Midsommar has a crazy intense opening. I mean, I feel like the first hour of this film, especially if you're doing the director's cut, which is about 3 hours total, the first hour is so anxious.
Did you look it up? Is it really 3 hours?
The movie started, for the director's cut, started at 9:05. I left once credits started to go to the bathroom and checked my phone, and it was midnight.
Oof.
So it's essentially about, it runs about 3 hours.
Yeah, just about.
Which is quite a marathon emotionally. The first hour is really emotional, really anxiety-ridden in a very different way. It's kind of a coldish open with Danny, our protagonist.
Look, it just felt really weird, okay? But I'm fine. I think it's great that you're going to Sweden. I do. I think it's amazing.
And she has an email from her sister who's like, I can't take it anymore. My mom and dad are coming too. Goodbye. And she can't get in touch with her sister. And she's emailing her back and she's calling her parents. And
Which right off the bat is stressful.
Right? I'm immediately stressed if someone doesn't pick up their phone. So I was very immediately uncomfortable, and I feel like movies only show that when bad things are going to happen. No one just casually misses a phone call in a movie.
Yeah, but you never know.
True. And so she calls her boyfriend, while pretending she's not clearly crying, saying, I'm nervous about it. And he's like, she always ropes you into her drama and her bullshit. And she's like, well, she's bipolar, so she's not just being dramatic. And he kind of blows it off and is like, you're letting her get away with manipulating you. And she kind of just lets it go. Yeah.
Well, meanwhile, he's out getting pizza with his friends, and they're like, we know you want to dump her. You need to just get it over with.
Yeah.
The thing he says is, but what if I decide that I don't want to break up later?
What if I decide I want her back and I can't have her back?
What if I regret it later and I can't get her back?
You don't want her back.
I might.
Yeah, so they're like, well, then we'll comfort you for the one day that you feel that way, and then you can get back to living your life, because he's miserable in the relationship. And
clearly they've heard just how miserable he is, and clearly they're all kind of over his relationship drama. One in particular, Mark, is very vocally over it. When Danny calls him, he gets up and he asks Mark to move so he can get out of the booth they're in, and Mark's like, I'm not moving. And so the other two guys have to move instead of just one person. And Mark's slightly annoyed that they even moved for him to get up and answer the phone. So immediately this relationship is uncomfortable.
And clearly has been bad for a long time.
Yeah, and later we find out that they've been together for 4 years, right?
3, I think.
I think he says 3.5, and she's 4 in 2 weeks.
Something like that.
Which is, again, another issue. You should know at least a very general idea of when your anniversary is.
Says you.
Oh, yeah, we...
I am not good at keeping track of time. No. I know when our anniversary is, and I don't think about it except for that one time per year. That's fine, but you know when it is. So she calls him, and he convinces her to just, let it go. So she ends up calling a friend and complaining about her relationship to her. And the friend is also slightly over it, but is way more, caring. Whereas the guy friends are like, yeah, fuck her, whatever. You need to move on. You need to find a girlfriend who actually likes sex. And her friend is like, if he's treating you like this and all this stuff, and you're putting too much on him or whatever, then he's not the guy. Fuck it. But clearly this is a couple that should have broken up a year ago. Yeah. At least. And then she gets a phone call
from an unknown number, Danny, and we see through Ari Aster's incredibly beautiful cinematography that I feel like after seeing Hereditary, we kind of expect from him.
That's one thing consistently through the movie is that it's incredible to look at. Not that this scene is really incredible to look at, but it's shot very well.
Yeah, and you see a house and you see 2 cars in the garage and their exhaust pipes have been like hosed off so they can run into the room, and they're like duct tape underneath the parents' bedroom so that the exhaust
yeah, so the fumes can build up in the room
in their bedroom, and that the doors are like duct tape shut. And then the other hose coming from the other car, the younger sister has duct taped it to her mouth, and she is dead, and she is like vomited while dying, and it's so strikingly awful to see, and not at all a way you expect to ever see a suicide, I feel like.
Yeah. So after Christian gets the call from Danny about that, you don't hear that conversation. You just hear him pick up the phone and she's like wailing on the other end.
Yeah.
And then the scene is just him like silently kind of stumbling home, like with this like essentially like a deer in headlights look on his face.
And not hurrying. No one wants to hurry to be in that situation, but like she needs him right now, and he leaves the bar or whatever, but he's not in a hurry. And then he's holding her and he's very dead-eyed, which I understand. I'm not faulting him for that.
It's still the deer in headlights look,
yeah.
Which is kind of a recurring character trait for him, is just him not having any agency over anything and being just like perpetually
weak-willed.
Not just that, just perpetually situations out of his hands.
But I feel like even when, as a character, even when shit is in his hands, like he could have broken up with Danny way before this. He's very inactive as a person. Sure. He's very passive. And so that's around Christmas time, because it's like snowing. And then,
is it?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's snowing when they open the garage. You can see the snow coming in, and he's walking through the snow.
Yeah.
So now months have passed, and it's getting ready to be like summer break, finals for school. And they're still together. You know, she's clearly still healing. She's lost her entire family in one night, in one moment. And I mean, how do you break up with someone in that situation? You abandon them as well? They should have been broken up a long time ago. But like, do we give Christian credit for staying?
I mean, he definitely can't bail at that point.
Yeah.
Like, if he was planning on leaving then, it's kind of bad timing now.
Yeah.
But then what's revealed later is that the 3 other guys, Pele, Josh, and Mark, are thinking about going to this Midsummer festival in Sweden.
Which is where Pele's like family is from, and he's part of like a cult. Well, a community.
And Christian has pretty much said that he's going to come as well, but he has not told Danny yet. And
at all.
That kind of comes out at this party, and then they have, like an almost fight about it.
They're leaving in 2 weeks. He's bought his ticket. He has not told her anything.
Yeah.
So it comes out at this party, and she's at this party, and she's like out of it, not really paying attention, and then the Swede thing kind of filters in, and you can see her like kind of snap to attention and be like, what? So and then they don't talk about it really at the party because it's awkward and you don't want to fight in front of people. And then they get home, and they don't fight. She asks why he never brings it up.
And he's just super defensive and like coming up with all these like, I just decided I was going today, and then
you had your ticket already though. You're leaving in 2 weeks.
And then he's in a position where it's like, oh well shit, I'm totally found out. And then his backup plan is, well, I was going to invite you to come, and it was a surprise
for her birthday, which is coming up. They literally land like the day before her birthday in Sweden.
Yeah.
And he should know when her birthday is. And again, he has not told. He just he never. So far, Christian has done nothing that makes him look good, except for the possibility of he didn't just leave her when all that happened, which is a very small thing, I think, compared to everything else. So they go to Sweden, and there's.
Well, before they go.
Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
Let's just the really important line is him coming up to somebody's apartment where the other 3 guys are, and she's coming right up after him, and he's like, guys, just so you know, I invited her to come. She's not going to come.
And the guys are like, what, she said she's not coming? He's like, well, she thinks she's coming, but she's not coming.
Essentially just, he just assumes that she's gonna not want to come.
But she is coming.
And then, it like one scene later, cold cuts to them in the plane.
Yeah. And so the 3 friends, which I think are all really interesting characters in their own right. Pele.
I invited my friends because this is a once-in-a-lifetime thing, and I wanted to share it, especially with my friends who I knew would appreciate it.
Is the one who's Swedish, and they're going back to kind of his community that this
Hälsingland is his little community.
Yeah. And he clearly likes Danny, like is low-key flirting with her, is very nice to her. He's like, I'm super glad you're coming. I'm really excited that you're coming.
Oh my God, the women here. What is it that makes them hotter?
Mark is the friend that is very kind of against her coming. Like, even like when he invites her, when Christian says, well, she's not coming, but she's coming. And then Danny walks in, Mark just shuts his laptop and is like, hey, can you look at this paragraph in the other room? And almost forgets to take the laptop with him, like is terrible at covering, is clearly not excited about this. And then the other friend, Josh.
Find your own subject or your own passion. And because, all right, look, I am actually invested in this. This is not some glorified hobby that I'm casually dipping my feet into.
Is the reason they're actually going, because he's doing his PhD on Midsommar Midsommar, I guess, traditions.
So Josh and Christian are both in like an anthropology department, but Christian hasn't figured out what he's doing his theses on still, and that will come up later. That's kind of a real sticking point later. Josh is fine with her going. He doesn't care. He's there to do his work and have a good time and, like, you know, do what he needs to do and see things and is excited to go. And so it's a really interesting dynamic because none of them are really friends with her. Pele likes her, but they're not really friends. He just has a crush on her. None of them know her very well. And they only know her kind of what Christian said about her, which I'm sure is not a great picture of her. So then they go to Sweden, and my God, is Sweden pretty. Like the fields. And
this is where the movie becomes really, really beautiful.
Oh my God. And it's one of my favorite scenes in the whole movie, and also one of the only kind of funny scenes in the whole movie, is they get there, and they
do mushrooms in a field.
Yes, they do mushrooms, and it's them taking mushrooms, and then it's a direct cut to them all, like, sitting on a hillside, again, very beautiful, like, just staring off into space, completely tripped, fucking out of it. Danny sees
all having a, like, different time with it.
Yeah, no one having a bad time yet.
Except for kind of Mark.
Yes.
Is having a bad time.
Mark is like, what time is it? And they're like, it's 9 p.m. And he's like, but it's still light because it's the midsummer, so it's like kind of light the whole always.
There's only like 2 or 3 hours of actual nighttime each day.
Yeah, so it's late, but it still looks like
I don't
day.
like that.
I don't like that. And then he goes, I'm gonna lay down. And then he lifts his head, he's like, we should all lay down. And then he looks at Josh.
Josh, I need you to lay down with me.
Like, just is starting to freak out a little bit.
There's like a bunch of other people in other parts of the field, and one of them just kind of walks by kind of close to them. Oh my God, it's a new person.
I can't handle that right now.
I don't want new people. And Pele's like, no, new people are good. And he's talking about nature and stuff.
And Danny is like, looks down at her hand on the ground. She sees like the grass growing through her hand, which I really hated.
One of the only bad CGI moments.
I agree. I hate it.
It's not done super well.
I hate it. I also hate, like, I hate it. But then Mark says, you guys are like my family. And that kind of triggers Danny.
And then the word family sets her off. And she's like, nope, not going to have a bad trip. She's like trying to convince herself not to have a bad trip. Like,
she gets up and she just starts walking away with like all of this like purpose, like walking quickly and going. And she's kind of talking herself down, like, you're fine. You don't need to think that, blah, blah, blah. She goes into like a wooden outhouse kind of thing, but it's much bigger than what you think of an outhouse. And there's no light, so she lights a match.
Something like that.
And a light flickers, and you see in the mirror reflection, like, her sister's face, like, dead face. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of your first, like, oh God. So it's also literally the darkest part of the whole film is that moment. Visually.
Because there's no other, there's no nighttime, really.
Yeah, that's why this movie, I think, is so interesting for a horror film, quote unquote.
Well, it's not really a standard horror film.
It's
it's a fever dream of a stress dream, but it's not really it's not like a horror movie.
No, but so she sees that and she goes back outside and she's just so uncomfortable, and she walks by this group of other people who are just part of the community or whatever, and they're
having a great time.
They're all in a circle, they're laughing, they look at her, they're laughing, and she gets very uncomfortable about it. She directly turns away from them, and she walks up to one of Pele's friends that she's met earlier, and he's like, hey, how you doing? And she's like, they were laughing at me. And he's like, no, they've been laughing all day, they were just laughing.
Would you like to come sit with us? Can I get you anything? She's like, no. And then turns away abruptly again, walks into the woods.
And then several hours
later falls
later.
Asleep in a different field.
Several hours late, like 6 hours later or more.
Could you imagine like falling asleep at like 9 p.m. but it's daytime, and then you wake up, 8 hours later or 10 hours later or something, and it's still daytime.
And you lost all that time.
What time is it? What day is it?
Yeah, she asks, is it tomorrow? And Christian's like, from yesterday's perspective, yeah. And they're not even in the community yet. That was just like this little weird pre-thing. It's madness. I love it. That's my favorite scene in the whole movie.
I think it's kind of implied that's where everybody parks their cars.
Yeah, although we really don't see cars. But it is that's kind of like the stop before
That's where they park their car.
Yeah.
And then everybody walks all the way to Helsingland.
Yeah. At this part, before they get to the Helsingland, We do meet Pelle's friend,
Ingmar.
and he has 2 friends from his like exposition. He went to England and he met Connie and Simon, who are a couple, and so he brought them to come see it. And I think those are really the only two. Those are the only 2 people who bring any outsiders to this.
Yep.
So then they go to the community area. I'm so bad at it.
It's like Helsingland.
Helsingland.
Something. It's
Literally the word
it's
hell
something
in it.
like that. I think. I don't think that was supposed to be part of any foreshadowing.
No, probably not. But, I do want to say the kind of quote-unquote antagonist almost of the film is her boyfriend, and his name is Christian. And this is all very pagan rituals, and I have to think that's done on purpose.
I wonder if that is.
I have to think it is. So they get there, and it's, again, beautiful, bright. Everyone's in these, like, white gowns and
Frocks. The guy calls them.
Yes,
they meet the one of the higher up guys who's in charge of stuff, and he's like very nice and bubbly, and they're like, "I like your outfit." "Oh yes, my frock. Very girly, don't you think?" And he kind of like swishes it around.
And he's like, "These are just, for the tradition for the Midsommar thing. We don't always wear these." And again, like, everyone is charming and nice and friendly, and how cool is this going to be?
It genuinely makes you feel like very at home.
It does. But also, I feel like the whole time we're still tense because at least the audience knows that we know shit's gonna hit the fan.
Well, and at the same time, it's like
so foreign.
Yeah, it's completely unlike anything that the main characters or us, the viewer, are used to.
Yeah, and again, they're so far removed from society, from like the rest of the world and society. It's a several-hour car drive to get to the thing where they did mushrooms, and then it's like a walk through the woods to get to the actual community.
A long one, too.
Yeah, a long one. So they're super far away. And it looks like at one point there's like one truck that is part of the community's property. And it only sits 2 people and has a very large like bed for, I'm assuming, like wood or something.
What is it they say how do they sustain themselves? They export what?
Like, it seems like they do like wool because they have sheep. I think they do woodworking. Just kind of like very what you think, I guess, if you're going to do kind of a commune, how they tend to do their stuff. And then of course they have their own like garden and livestock. They've built all the buildings you see around them, which they're not a lot of. There's like, it seems like maybe 7 buildings in the whole part of it.
Yeah, small number.
Really crazy architecture.
Yeah, I don't know if that's like classic Nordic architecture or what. A lot of like narrow sloping roofs.
Like super downsloping for some of them, where I had never seen anything like it personally. And then there's like an A-frame building, and then there's like a very like large kind of barn-looking building where they all sleep, which is a communal sleeping space for everyone who's under 32? 36. Age is important.
Age is important. When they go into the sleeping area, that's when they explain that, from birth to 18, you're considered a child. 18 to 36, you are on your
pilgrimage?
You're kind of...
Rosh Hashanah? No. Rumspringa?
Oh, yeah. I think they do call it the Rumspringa.
Where you can go out into the world from 18 to 36 and bring, and experience the world, and then you come home and you kind of bring your knowledge back. You can bring outsiders to some extent.
I don't think you're supposed to be gone that whole 18 years. I think you can just come and go as you want during those 18 years. Yeah. That's like your pre-adult phase. And then at 36, you're an adult working part of the community. You work from 36 to 18 years after that. And then that's your working age.
58.
And then you're kind of in this retirement period after that, up until 72.
From 58 to 72, you kind of become, it seems like you're an elder and you're respected and you're doing some stuff for the thing, but you're not definitely doing any like heavy lifting. And then and then Danny asks, what happens at 72? Pelle draws the line across his neck and he's like, eh.
Everybody laughs.
And ha ha ha, so fun.
And then the next day.
We get a really cute moment with Danny where, well, they're all at this table that is shaped like a rune, which is very like angular. There's no roundedness at all, really, in almost any building and anywhere. You really don't. It's very blockish and squares and harsh lines. Don't you agree?
Except for that huge circle that's done for a lot of the kind of the announcements are done from up there.
And the dancing and stuff.
Yeah, and then it's got a certain number of chairs up there.
And then there's the roundness for the dance around the maypole. But like they're sitting and their buildings feel very like linear somehow. Because I guess because runes are linear, or at least the runes that we see tend to be more linear in this case.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if that's an intentional thing or whether we're just kind of grasping for meaning.
That's
I mean,
true.
the tables are definitely done in the shape of runes, and runes are all straight lines.
Yeah.
At least all the runes that we see in the movie.
So because of the way the table is set up as runes, you from where you're sitting, you can't see everyone else. You can see some people, and like so when the announcements are made, like our group of people have to kind of turn around to see what's being said and done, which I think is kind of an interesting visual to not be able to see everything. Mm-hmm. But so the guys are all at the table, sitting, getting ready for, it looks like breakfast. Some of the women are walking backwards and picking up flowers, and those little bouquets will go on the table, and it's very pretty.
It's clearly like a,
like tradition-y thing.
Yeah, it's clearly a traditional thing.
And Josh says, no, and Mark says, do those girls know? What is it? He says,
somebody should tell them they're picking them backwards.
no, what is it? They're like walking stupid. And Mark has like funny bits, as much as I kind of don't like him as a person. He does
He's
add
vaping hard through the whole movie.
He is constantly it looks like a jewel. It doesn't even look like a full vape.
Something like that.
He also is clearly uncomfortable about the amount of nature around them. He's
ticks.
He talks about how he's afraid of ticks.
I'll check your scalp for ticks if you check my scalp for ticks.
And he's always wearing jeans, even though it seems very like warm, not insanely hot, but warm. And he always has boots on, and his socks, his jeans are tucked into his socks at all times.
It's the brightest, warmest summer in many years in Sweden.
Yes, and he is still wearing full jeans and boots and very heavy socks because he ain't trying to live that tick life. He had his uncle get Lyme, okay? I'm sure it wasn't worth it for a walk in the park or a picnic.
He's fucked.
So he has that kind of fear of nature, which is, again, interesting. I think all the characters have their own. They feel very fleshed out in a pretty short amount of time.
Yeah, all the characters feel pretty well fleshed out.
Yeah. So, but Danny also picks flowers and hands a small bouquet to Christian. He's like, "Oh, did you pick them backwards?" And she's like, "I sure did," and it's very sweet. And then we were told the night before, what's going to happen the next day. What's the first thing that we're going to see for the Midsommar stuff? Blah blah blah.
What is it, the Estupa or something like that?
Yes, I believe it's called the Estupa. Pelle says that, and Josh goes, "Like a real one?" And everyone else is like, well, tell us what's happening.
And Josh is the one who's getting his PhD in this, or doing his PhD theses on the Midsommar Festival.
Yeah, and so he actually knows that. And even though Christian is in the same program as him, Christian's clearly not as passionate, clearly doesn't know what that word means, hasn't done any actual research ahead of time.
He's clearly attempting to Google it during the scene, but he doesn't have signal.
Yeah. So Josh is like, are we going to see a real one? And Pelle's like, yeah, and then they won't tell anyone else what that is. And then so breakfast happens. Mark is like, I'm going to go take a nap. I'm tired, whatever. And so he's going to miss the...
whatever the next thing
is. And then we get a scene that feels longer in the director's cut, but Ian says it's probably not any longer than the original, and you're probably right. It feels like...
I think it's just a really long scene to start off with.
And you're so... And like, you're so... Even the first time we saw the film... You're so full of dread because you kind of think you know what's going to happen. And then knowing what's going to happen and seeing it again, I was even more filled with dread because it was not just, this is probably going to happen, is I know what's going to happen. This is the hardest part of the film to watch.
Mm-hmm. And it's this old couple they've been leading the...
breakfast.
Like the meal. They have the best seats at the table.
No one sits down until they sit down. No one picks up their forks until they pick up their forks. And then they do
when they're done eating, their chairs get picked up and they're carried away.
And they do a weird, like, singing thing, and they do a breathing thing. Breathing is really a thing in this community, so it's like,
yeah.
And then they get carried up in their chairs up this massive mountain.
Yeah, like...
gorgeous, like, white mountain.
Yeah, which, pretty convenient.
I would love. And then they someone cuts open their palms and they wipe their blood on like what look like gravestones with runes on them.
They're just
markers.
They're carved stones with
you're right,
with runes on them.
Yeah, because we know they don't bury bodies, so you're right.
Mm-hmm.
And then the woman walks up, and everyone is down below in this like kind of empty valley part, looking up at this massive mountain at this woman, and
there's this big circular stone right at the bottom of the cliff.
And she says something in Swedish, and she goes with her hands, and she claps, and she kind of strikes a pose, and she jumps.
Yeah. And just like kind of does a belly flop into the rock, like face first, dies instantly.
And you think because of movies being the way they are that there will be a cutaway because, generally what you think is going to, what your mind is going to conjure is going to be worse. Ari Aster does not cut away. We see her face after, for several times throughout the film. Actually, we will see flickers of her face again in that moment. And so, Connie and Simon are there and they are immediately losing their shit. They're screaming, "This is fucked. What is wrong with you? How is no one doing anything? Everyone's just standing there watching it."
And meanwhile, Christian and Danny are just silently freaking out. And then Josh obviously knew it was coming, so he's just kind of like mentally taking notes.
Yeah. Which is, he feels very cold in this. But at the same time, I'm assuming, and we'll get to this a little bit in a conversation that Christian will have later, it's that like, Josh knew this was coming, so he was probably already mentally prepared. And then also, if you're looking at this from an anthropological point of view, it's a different way to handle death, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's a wrong way to handle death. But if you don't know that's coming, that's really jarring. And Pele will say later to Danny, who's clearly upset about this whole thing, like, I should have warned you. And yeah, you should have. Maybe you should have told her when the time was clearly obvious where you could have when they asked what this was going to be. Yeah. And...
Well, especially because when Simon and Connie are freaking out about it, one of the people who lives there, one of the older women who's kind of in charge of...
Oh, this is after the other man jumps.
No, it's well, yeah. Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah, obviously the other guy jumps too.
But his jump, he jumps legs first, and they break. And he falls off the rock and he's not dead. And there's someone in the crowd with a giant wooden mallet. And then that person, like 3 other people come up and they each whack that.
They Gallagher him
in the head until he is dead. And each person takes a hit. And it's all done very stoically. And so obviously Connie and Simon are freaking out. And yeah, they're starting to leave. They're like, fuck this, we're going. And then the woman comes up to them.
But what I was going to say is that before she comes up to him, she asks Ingmar, did you not tell them what was going to happen today?
Yeah, that's not fair to them. Which, again, there are moments like that where you feel like maybe these people aren't necessarily bad or evil, but then there are other shit that will happen, and you're like, nah, fuck that woman, though. Mm. But then she says,
so far everybody's very likable.
Yeah, in the community, yeah. And she tries to explain to them, we see life as a cyclical, and there's a woman over there and she's pregnant, and when that baby is born, she will have the woman who's died's name, and they will live on in that way. And we don't believe in letting our old waste away in a hospital, or keep them alive, with medicine and blah blah blah. This is how we do it, and it's a respect, and it's done joyously. And
well, I think they have medicine. They have modern medicine.
Oh no, but I mean, they're not using it to extend their life beyond 72.
Beyond, a livable state. And I guess they've decided that the cutoff for a livable age is 72.
Yeah. And so Connie and Simon are clearly still upset, and that is actually kind of an important moment. Danny's super freaked out. Christian is also freaked out in his own way, and so as everyone is kind of filing away almost in a very loose line away from that area, he goes, "Are you okay?" And she's like, "Yeah, I need to be alone," or whatever. And he goes, "Oh, okay," and she walks away because he's also struggling.
I think she says, "I just need to not be here right now."
Yes, which is I think a sentence people who have anxiety can relate to. If it feels like she's about to have a panic attack, and essentially she kind of does. She just kind of storms walks away, gets as much kind of distance as she can, and then she kind of falls to her knees and she's crying and screaming and struggling, and you can see in her mind flash to her sister and her parents, and also the corpses of these people who just died, and she's having a hard time. So she then goes back to the big room where everyone sleeps and they stay, and Pele comes in and he's like, "Are you okay? I should have warned you." And again, yeah, you should have. And he kind of holds her hand, and he's already given her a portrait of her that he's drawn for her birthday, because it's her birthday, and Christian has forgotten. Mm-hmm. And Christian's just a shitty boyfriend. But Pele likes her, and in this moment, and a lot of moments, he's really sweet to her. But we now know from seeing the whole film that, he brought them here for a reason. And so he's not necessarily a good guy. So Christian has decided he is going to do his theses on this community and their Midsommar tradition. And he decides to go tell Josh that.
Yeah, he's incapable of any independent thought.
Or confrontation handled well.
Yeah, so he's like, goes to tell Josh about it. And Josh calls him out, like, for being a leech, for not having any independent ideas, for letting him do all the work, all the pre-research to get him to this position so that he can just latch onto it.
He's like, well, I'm open to being collaborators. And Josh
Christian
is like, Christian says that, and Josh is like, no. And he's like, well, you're doing it on, Midsommar traditions. You're leaving to go to a different country after this and blah, blah. And he's like, yeah, but you knew I was doing it, like, on this, including these people and these traditions. And it's a very intense moment, I feel like, to see an argument. All the arguments that happen feel really real.
Yeah.
Which makes it so intense and uncomfortable. Because they're not getting physical with each other, but there's this just, like, kind of, like, just exasperated, like low-key shock from Josh, where he's like, are you serious?
Yeah.
And then Christian, like, acting like he's defending himself because he's not in the wrong, but he's totally in the wrong.
Absolutely.
So Christian is...
I think that's probably the worst thing Christian does in the movie. Just be a fucking leech.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that is... No, I don't feel like anyone ever likes Christian in this movie. I feel like immediately we dislike him, and he doesn't ever redeem himself.
Not really. Not to say he's like a monster or anything. He just like not a good person.
Yeah.
Just like he's, he has no agency in his relationship, so he just stays in it too long and makes it difficult. He has not a whole lot of redeeming qualities.
And I think being a bad person, that sucks. No one wants to be a bad person. But when you're in a situation like this where shit is really going to hit the fan, being a bad person feels so much more suddenly amplified because it's like, you're not doing anything to help. You're almost making things worse in his own way. So Christian goes to Pele and is like, hey, is it okay if I, do my theses on this? And Pele's like, yeah, you can't use names. He's been letting Josh take photos kind of very discreetly. And so Pele's kind of said, I've talked to the elders and they'll let you write about it, but you can't use names, you can't hint at location and all this stuff. So we can keep our secrecy and, all of that, which makes sense if it's if they're people just committing suicide when they turn 72, you probably want to stay a little bit away from the world.
Yeah.
So Christian is like interviewing some random people of the community questions. And after the suicide, he goes and he talks to Ula, who is one of the women there, and she's breathtaking. She's so pretty. Every time she's on screen, I can't stop looking at her. I think she's so pretty.
Is this one of the extended scenes?
Yes. So this is one of the scenes that is in the director's cut and was not in the original. So Ula and like some people are decorating, kind of looks like a Christmas tree. It's very that type of tree, slightly smaller, with like tinsel and ornaments and stuff. And he asks her, while they're doing that, how many have you seen a lot of the suicide things? And she's like, well, yeah, every time someone turns 72, I've seen it happen every time. And so we just kind of learned that this is not part of Midsommar. This is just part of their life. Mm-hmm. Because Midsommar, the tradition only happens every 90 years.
Well, Midsommar happens every year, but this special Midsommar year only happens every 90 years.
So no one has ever seen more than one because they all die at 72. Mm-hmm. And so they're decorating that tree, and this scene is cut, I'm assuming because of the tree thing. And then another scene, that kind of the next scene we get, at kind of really one of the only few night scenes, night quote unquote, because it's still decently light. It's kind of dusky. Mm-hmm. And they're by like a lake. And they're chanting or whatever, and they hoist the tree into the water to give it to the goddess who's, helped them with their harvest and everything. And then we get some really bad acting from the cult people, like purposely bad.
Church camp level acting.
From adults though.
Yeah, like call and response style acting.
Yeah. And a guy walks forward and he's like, oh, did you hear that sound? Everyone's like, I didn't hear anything. And he's like, the goddess still wants more things. We need to sacrifice more for her. And they're like, well, what should we give? We already gave our good tree. And this kid walks forward who is dressed in, again, like tinsel and stuff, dressed like the tree.
He's adorned like the tree, exactly, like the exact thing that the tree is wearing. So.
And he's like, I will give up my life for the community and to the goddess. Like, Danny's just watching this all unfold, clearly, like, just shocked and disgusted. And they...
Well, especially because this is literally the day after she saw 2 people get their heads
Yeah, this
exploded.
is, like, not even the next fully... Like, not even 24 hours. It's, like, less than a day away. And it's a child. It's not an old person where you could say, well, maybe this is, just differences. This is a 12-year-old or something.
So, yeah, they're about to throw him into the river.
They give him a heavy rock and tie stuff to his
a rock
ankles.
to him, about to throw him in. And that's when she, she runs forward to try to stop them. And then at the same time, everybody in the crowd does the call and response. No, he's proven himself.
He's proven he's brave enough to do it.
Yeah,
the goddess is fine.
Turns out it's just a reenactment of something they do every year.
Yeah. And the kid is just fine, and everyone kind of cheers and walks off. And Danny's like, okay, cool. What? And then she and Christian have a scene. Again, this is only in the director's cut. And I'm sad. I think this is the part I'm most upset about only being in the director's cut, is they have this argument again at like a dusky nighttime. This might be actually before the tree scene.
It's definitely after Christian tells Josh that he's essentially going to steal his PhD and thinks it's a totally fine thing.
And Danny is immediately kind of on Josh's side, where she's like, well, she's kind of on both sides, because she's like, you could collaborate, because she didn't hear Josh's side of things where clearly he's just being a leech. So she's just excited that her boyfriend has finally kind of found some direction. But
in this conversation, doesn't she say that they have to leave?
Yeah, yes.
And he's like, yeah, I don't think she's excited for him at all.
No, you're right. Back up, retrack. She tells him we have to leave, and this is after the tree thing and the suicide. And she's like, I can't be here. We have to go. And he says,
like, well, we can't go because I'm doing my thesis on this now.
And then he kind of says, well, I'm not going. Meaning, you can go.
Yeah.
But I'm not. And she says what is a really good point, and I think that's why I don't like that it's cut, which is, what makes you think they're going to let you write about this place, even if they say they will? Because they depend on the secrecy to be able to act this way.
So yeah, that's one of the important lines from that scene. Then the other important line is that they do really start fighting, and she's like, "Do you not love me anymore?" And he says nothing. He
does not say, "Oh, I do love you" or anything. He kind of turns it on her, and because she's a psychology major.
Mm-hmm.
And he's saying, you're psychoanalyzing our relationship, blah, blah, blah. Because she's talking about how, we've been in this phase for a long time where, we're falling out of love and blah, blah, blah. And so he kind of turns it on her and is like, oh, you're just psychoanalyzing it. And then he kind of brings up how she does things just to get things in return. So earlier where we talked about she picked up that bouquet and gave it to him, Danny viewed that as just I got you flowers, I'm cute, I did the whole thing. And he's like, clearly you did that, so I'll do something back.
And no, clearly you did that just to get at me because I forgot your birthday.
Yeah.
Type thing. You're doing nice things just to rub it in my face.
To make me feel guilty.
Yeah. And she's like, what?
Yeah. Side note, we saw the director's cut with our friend Lily, and I was sitting in between Ian and Lily. And Lily was vocally under her breath, excuse me? Fuck off.
that is some next level crazy.
Yeah. And he kind of, they fight, and he kind of just walks away from it.
Yeah.
Without any resolution. And again, kind of with just this underlying factor of, we're not in a good place. You can leave if you want, but I'm not.
Mm-hmm.
And then they go back to, eventually they'll end up back in the big barn where everyone sleeps, and she asks Josh
first. It's not a barn, it's a super nice living quarters.
It's beautiful. There's hand paintings on the wall, which of course there's a lot of dicks, and nudity. I think even Josh, or even Mark mentions that there's penises all over the walls. And maybe he's asked if you're in this room until you're, everyone's sharing it until you're in your 30s, how do people have sex? And also there's a baby, there's a crib for a baby. There's a baby who cries the whole night, every night.
Yeah.
I cannot. Speaking of drawings, though, earlier in kind of what feels like a throwaway scene, but is actually really good foreshadowing.
Mm-hmm.
It's Connie, Simon, our gang of Danny, Christian, Pele, Josh, Mark, and
Ingemar.
And they're all walking kind of oh, here's where we do this, here's where we do that. And Connie and Simon and Ingmar kind of split off to go do something else. And when the camera follows them...
Wait, which part? The bear part or
Both.
the tapestry?
Both. So Simon says, as we see it, kind of as the camera pans over it, that there's just a kind of a small cage and a full bear in there. And Simon says, "Are we not going to discuss the bear?"
And Ingemar's like, "It's a bear."
Yeah, and that's it. Bear will come back, but what? But then Connie sees like a tapestry hanging up, and she's like, "Oh, can we go look at this?" And Ingemar's like, "Yeah, let's go." And it's crazy.
The way it pans across it because it's a little story with just pictures and
like embroidered.
Yeah,
Very,
it's a tapestry.
Yeah, but I love seeing shit like that.
This is one of the parts where a number of people in the theater laugh every time because like it's like in a number of panels it's like a girl that falls in love with a guy, and then in the next one she's like squatting over a cup and her menstrual blood's going into it, and then she's putting the pubes and the menstrual blood into like some food that he eats, and then it's like spiralized because he's like
hypnotized or under her spell.
So it's like instructions for a love spell,
and then they get married,
super gross one at that.
And then they get married in the tapestry, and she's pregnant.
Oh yeah, that's the last one.
And like, what? And so again, this scene feels like, I think this is why Ari Aster is brilliant. This scene feels like a weird, funny throwaway to just be like, here, look at more about this kind of world building.
A lot of the scenes are kind of lighthearted and like get a laugh out of some people.
Yeah.
Not like a ton of them, but the movie's not just like negative all the time. In fact, it's, other than the idea that you're just out of place and uncomfortable, there's a lot that's, positive and funny even at times.
Yeah, and I think there is something to say for the way this community operates, which there's this big sense of communal emotions and sharing of emotions. So as we see early on, we saw Danny walk away and kind of have like a mini panic attack and cry, and when shit hit the fan, or when people hit the ground, our people on the way that our world works, they all kind of split off and deal with it in their own separate way. Whereas as a community,
they're all mourning
together and
celebrate. It's like a celebration / mourning, which is kind of how they describe it.
And we'll see throughout the film that, they mourn together, they joy together. But yeah, there's a sense of community that is like nothing I've ever seen, but also something I could understand someone wanting or liking.
Yeah, it's bizarre and foreign, but it definitely is portrayed as a positive thing, and yeah, it's interesting. So the first two people to bail are Simon and Connie.
Simon and Connie, who we knew were going to leave because mainly they were like, this is fucked.
Yeah, we knew they were going to bail. So essentially, Connie's going to grab her stuff, and one of the guys from the town comes up and says, all right, Simon just left in the only truck we have. They only have one seat. And obviously
like
she's not fine with that.
And she's like, I could have sat on his lap. He wouldn't leave me. And he's like, we do not break traffic laws.
Yeah. I assume you could, but we do not break traffic laws. And it's the same guy who's like, frock is very frilly. And, this guy, so you're, very, very bubbly and positive.
And giving her this terrible news, and she's not handling it great because she's like pissed and frustrated, and he wouldn't do that. And what do you mean? Yeah. And so she has to wait like an hour for the truck to get back.
Well, it's a 35-minute drive each way, and the thing leaves in an hour and a half. So
we don't want to waste time.
If it's possible, to make it to the train, he had to leave right this second. In 1 hour or a little bit over an hour, the truck will be back to pick you up, and it'll get you to the train station just in time.
Yeah.
And then she huffs off, and then Danny's kind of standing there awkwardly the whole time, and he turns over and he's like, so lunch will be in 5 minutes. And then he just walks off. And then at lunch, they're talking about it, and that's when another guy leans in and he's like, I can fill in what
I drove the truck.
I drove this, Simon called from the landline
calmed Connie down.
And calmed her down, and then she got picked up and took in. Why did you not get to say goodbye?
Yeah, and Danny is really upset that Simon left Connie. She goes to talk to Christian about it while he's interviewing another person about like kind of rituals, or how he asked the question about relationships right in front of her while holding her hand. After she tells him, and he kind of blows her off that like Simon left Connie, and he's like, that's awful. So about relationships, how do you handle incest? And the guy's like,
we don't do it.
We don't do it. We understand the incest taboo. We sometimes first cousins are allowed to marry, but that's it.
The important thing they say is, all marriages have to be you have to consult the elders before you can get married, and it's specifically because we're such an insular community that
we keep the bloodlines pure.
You can't just have everybody doing
fucking
incest
everyone
all the time.
That's not great. And so again, he kind of blows off Danny. Another moment of just Christian being a dick. And later, we see when they're eating, she's sitting next to Christian, and she's still like, I can't believe Simon left Connie. And then she says, I could see you doing that. And that is such a small comment that says so fucking much.
Yeah.
And
I don't remember how he reacts to that. He's just like, what?
Yeah, he doesn't even really react because he's very like non-confrontational.
And he's hardly paying attention.
Yeah, and he's an awful person. But Christian has kind of caught the eye of Maya, who is a pretty redhead girl from the community. And
I think the reason that they made her redhead, honestly, is just
more visually easy to see.
Yeah, just so visually you can always see her in a crowd.
Yeah.
Because everybody else is like
very blonde or light brown. And we should mention, because I do feel like it's a thing, is that race in this movie is everyone in this movie is white, except for Connie and Simon, who are British, but they are Indian, right? Connie looks like she's Indian, I believe.
I have no idea.
Just not white. And then Josh is black, African American. Mark is probably Jewish.
How does this have anything to do with the movie?
Well, I think they say something about keeping the bloodlines pure, and I think that while Josh or Christian could have been an option for someone to have sex with one of their people, I don't think Connie or Simon or Josh were ever going to be viable in that. I think they were there just to be sacrificed. They were brought with Pele and Ingmar knowing that they were going to be sacrificed. They were brought as sacrificial lambs with no possibility of them surviving, I think.
Yeah. I don't know if that's an intentional thing or not. It does kind of seem like a few times Josh is blown off.
Yeah.
By
elders and other people,
and by Pele even once.
Yeah,
I'll tell you later, but I don't know if that's specifically intended to be a race thing. I think we're just reading in too much to it.
I don't know. I think Ari Aster's. I don't know. I think if you're gonna do a film where
if anybody is not white, it has to be addressed that they're not white.
No, not necessarily. But if it's an insular community and they're keeping if they're literally saying we're keeping bloodlines pure. But
he says bloodlines pure distinctly against incest.
I think it's a thing. You don't have to agree.
I don't think it makes any sense.
I think it does.
In the way the story's laid out. I think you're just reading into it.
You think that Christian's character could have been black and it would have gone the same way?
No, I'm saying that I don't think that was intended to be a plot point at all. Okay.
So you don't think their race has anything to do with it?
No, I don't think so.
Okay. We're allowed to disagree.
Of all the things that this movie covers, I don't think race is one of them.
I think it is. In a very small, minuscule way, but yeah. But so Simon and Connie are out of the picture now. We will see their bodies later, but they are gone. And they're gone pretty quickly and with very little hullabaloo. Danny's the only one who seems to notice or care that they're gone. Even Josh and Mark and Christian, they don't care.
At that point, everybody's in their own stuff. So Christian and Josh are trying to do their research for their theses, and they're beefing with each other while also trying to get the research done. Mark is always in his own world.
He sees there's one girl.
There is a hot girl, so he's about
and she has looked at him twice. And so at one point, so for the suicides, their bodies are burned. They were turned into ash. Then they're kind of shoveled gently into this long,
just laid out on and next to this big
dead
log.
tree. Big. I think it's massive.
It's a full dead tree.
Dead tree. And we see that, and that's in the background essentially. And Josh is talking to Pele about research or whatever, and Mark says, "I'm going to go take a piss," and he pees on the ancestral tree.
which is clearly surrounded by ash.
And also, like, the only dead thing around. Like, there's, like, I don't know, it clearly looks like it's a thing.
You do kind of have to be exceptionally stupid to pull that one off.
Mark seems exceptionally stupid, though.
Yeah, maybe.
So he pisses on it. He doesn't speak Swedish, so when Ulf, one of the elders, starts screaming at him, he's, you're pissing on our ancestral tree, and Mark doesn't understand Swedish, but he understands tone, so he's like, ah, and he's trying to get away, and his dick's out, and Pelle runs over, and he's like, it's okay, I'll explain, blah, 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 but you can't do that, ancestral tree.
And the guy is so mad at him. He's, like, screaming at him in the background. And then, like, by the end of the scene, he is, like, weeping into the arms of other people. That is
extended. That's
in the background, it's not extended, but you get way more scenes of the guy being really pissed at him.
And I feel like fully crying.
And, like, yeah, like,
crying.
Weeping. But, you're right. What is extended about that scene is Pelle saying, yeah, he's very emotional, and this is a big week for him.
Yes.
The line, this is a big week for him, is a big deal, and yeah. I'm kind of confused as to why that was cut. Or did we just not notice that line the first time watching it?
I think it was cut. Also, in that moment, the girl who Mark likes comes over and says, tell him it's okay, it's fine, blah blah blah, and then she kind of walks away. She kind of glances at Mark, but doesn't talk to him. And Mark's like, "What'd you say? What'd you say?" And Pelle's like, "She just said it's fine. Like she said 2 sentences to me. You heard it." But Mark is like, "Tell me everything she said." And then, so it's lunchtime or dinner time. It's so bright, who knows? And that's when Danny, this is the same meal that Danny says, I could see you doing that, with him leaving her. Mm-hmm. And so Danny has joined the women that day and made meat pies for lunch. And everyone is getting put out a pie. We see the redhead who likes Christian, who also put a sleeping, like, love rune under his bed overnight. She made his pie. His glass of juice or whatever is slightly darker than everyone else's.
It's like everybody else is drinking, like, essentially like lemonade, and his is clearly pink lemonade.
Yeah. So, blood orange lemonade.
Yeah.
So he's frustrated about Danny, and
takes a big bite of meat pie, pulls a pube out of his mouth.
Which is red.
And he's like, there's a hair in this. And Mark's like, that is a pube. And he's like, it's not a pube, and throws it away, and then takes a big fat gulp of pink lemonade.
Yeah, and Mark starts, like, kind of combing through his meat pie to make sure his doesn't have hair.
Nobody notices that his drink is different, and
no one
really
says anything either.
Nobody really talks about the fact that they found a pube in there. They just, like, go on with their thing.
Yeah.
Which sounds about right. If you were invited to this, like, clearly religious ceremony and you found a hair in your food, I don't think you would bring it up. You would not bring it up more than once.
Yeah, no, you're a guest. You would tell your friends and, like, oh, whatever, and then you would, like, just you wouldn't bring it up. I think. Mm. But again, that's just so well done. The drink is a different color, and if you're paying attention, you see it, but no one says it. Ari Aster is all about showing you shit and not telling you stuff, which I think is what makes this movie so interesting and worth rewatching. Mm-hmm. So at that same lunch or dinner, the girl Mark likes come up and she's like, hey, come with me. And he's like, I'm going to go. And he just follow hers. And Mark is now out of the picture.
Yeah, you'll come with me, yeah? I'm going to go with her. And, like, nobody even, like...
Everyone's in their own world at this point. No one cares.
Nobody even responds. They're just like, yeah, I guess he's gone.
Like, Connie and Simon are gone, but no one cares.
And he's gone for the rest of the day and nobody says it.
They go to bed.
They go to bed without him.
And they're like, I guess he's still with that girl? ? But yeah, no one cares.
Nobody gives a fuck. Josh goes to bed with his shoes on, which is weird. And that's because once he waits for the time at night where it actually gets dark, then skedoodles out to this, like, super religious place that he's already been told he cannot take pictures of. And he goes in and he takes one of the religious books off the shelves and he starts flipping through it and taking pictures of it.
So while he's taking those pictures in the dark or whatever, someone kind of walks in and he turns around, but they're very shadowed. And he's like, Mark? And
which is so weird because, like, so the thing is that this guy is wearing Mark's face, but, like,
and his dick is out.
Is he wearing Mark's dick? I think.
Oh my god, is he?
Yeah, I think he's wearing Mark's dick.
That's gross. Who is it?
I think it's probably the guy who's really pissed off at him.
Oh.
Because his build is nothing like Mark's. His face is completely in shade. Mm-hmm. So for Josh to turn around and be like, Mark? when he can't even see his face well and only sees his silhouette, which is not at all like Mark's. And then when he steps into the light, his face is so poorly stretched over the other guy's face
so creepy
that it looks nothing like him.
And so he's squinting.
I think this is a problematic scene because it's just stupid.
I don't understand. And then he says that, and then the person kind of walks closer to him, and he's squinting, and he's kind of walking forward to him, and then from behind, someone whacks him in the back of the head with something that knocks him on the ground. He's bleeding from the head, and the body's dragged away. End of scene.
And that's the last you see of him.
Last you see of Josh. And so, one scene, again, with Christian, and this scene upset me so much more than I expected it to, is that as Josh has now disappeared, Mark has disappeared, so has, like, this holy book that Josh was taking pictures of.
The book didn't actually disappear.
Yeah,
but
that's right.
The leaders from the town come and say, these books are missing.
And so are your friends.
And so they pull them aside, like, discreetly, and they're like, so our book's missing and your two friends are missing. You know how this looks,
And Danny and Pelly are like, honestly, we don't know where they are. We don't know what would have happened, blah, blah. And Christian is just like, we would not want to be associated with them.
You have to believe that we have nothing to do with them. Just believe that we're not friends with them. And blah, blah,
we don't
blah,
associate with them. I don't think Mark would do this, but Josh would certainly do this.
Yeah.
And it's like he's dealing with the cops. They have no legal authority over you. Also, why are you a piece of shit? What the fuck?
He just doesn't want to get kicked out of this new thesis that he leached himself into.
I mean, at least he's getting ideally he would be getting all of Josh's research, so that's good for him.
Good for him.
And then they split up Josh and Christian. The couple. They split up Danny and Christian, and Danny spends the day with the women kind of again. And my other kind of favorite scene happens where she dances with the maypole dance, and they get before the dance.
And while the dance is happening, it cuts over to Christian, who said, so and so needs to talk to you. I don't remember her name.
She's kind of the woman in charge again.
It's the woman in charge.
And he gets taken to like her house.
Like, believe me, I have no idea where the book is. And she's like, completely brushes him off, and he's like, have you?
What do you think of Maya?
Yeah, what do you think of Maya?
And he's like,
what?
What? The redhead? And she's like, yeah.
You've been approved to mate with her.
Yes. And then in the extended cut, he says, well, I'm here with Danny. I'm with someone. And she goes, well, Danny will never know.
Mm-hmm. And then also in the extended version is where she says, this will be a unique opportunity to see our mating rituals.
Mm-hmm. From the inside.
And then he's like, is there a way that I could observe it without participating?
And she's like, no. And then
she doesn't. I don't think she says no.
No, you're right.
That's when the scene ends because it's just him like wandering out of that building.
No,
confused.
He says that scene ends with him saying this in the original and in the director's cut, which I love. And he goes, "I think I ate one of her pubes."
Oh yeah, and she says, "I think that is very well the case."
Because again, the love spell. This has been set up.
Mm-hmm.
And then Danny goes with the girls, and she becomes really good, kind of buddy with one of the girls, who's of course beautiful, and she's like,
they take this hallucinogenic drink.
Mm-hmm. And, Danny has a very similar feeling at the beginning of it where she looks down her feet and there's like the grass coming through it. Again, bad CGI. Yeah, not as bad.
This one is more tolerable because it just kind of looked like, it didn't look like it was trying to do anything like grass growing through her hand. It was just kind of, her feet were the texture of the grass.
Like disappearing into the ground almost.
If it was trying to make it look like they were just disappearing into the ground, it was very poor CGI. But if it was just trying to make her feet look the texture of the grass, then it did its job perfectly.
So they do the maypole dance with all the younger women or whatever in the
whole thing is this is a competition for being
the May Queen.
And it's whoever can dance the longest.
And of course
without falling down. If you trip or fall at all, you're out.
Yeah, and so they're all on this hallucinogenic drink. It's very fast and it's a lot of stop, go, reverse, do this different move, blah, blah, blah.
And can we say that the effects that are done for this drink are probably the best in the movie, where it's just, it goes with the scene. So like if there's nothing particularly interesting happening, it'll just be small things happening. But like, when people like lean in to talk to her, whatever their most distinct feature is kind of gets bigger.
Enhanced. Yeah.
So like somebody with big eyes comes in to talk to her, talks close to her face.
Yeah.
And their eyes are like way bigger than they should be. But not like cartoonishly bigger, just
the subtleties of being fucked up. As
their face leans in, it's like their eyes get bigger faster than the rest of their face. Somebody with a big nose walks by and it's like slightly bigger than it should be.
Yeah, and then when a great moment happens with her and the girl says something to her and she's like, "Oh, I don't speak Swedish," and the girl is like, "You're speaking right now. We're communicating." But you can, and that's being spoken.
It's subtitles for that. But if you just listen, it's not Swedish at all. It's just them going blah, 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 blah.
Yeah, they're just having a weird bonding moment, and they're just fucked up. She cannot speak Swedish, and the other woman isn't speaking Swedish anyway. And so she's dancing, and she keeps going, and she looks.
It seems like a long time passes of dancing.
It has to be.
Like an hour of dancing or something. Because it's down to 8 people.
And they're the final 8 and they cheer. But and there was 20 or something or more when they started. But you can see that the crowd watching them has grown. Christian has come back to watch.
Christian's given the same hallucinogenic stuff.
Tea that the girls drank. And the Ula offers it to him.
And he really doesn't want to take it because he's like...
He knows that he's being set up for this Maya thing.
Well, yeah, and he's just kind of not in a good place. He's like, I don't know if I should. I don't want to have a bad trip. And she's like, you won't. Gives it to him.
Yeah, and he's like, okay.
He just drinks it. And from that point on, he's just having a terrible time. Anytime he looks at him, he's kind of hunched up and ghoulish. And he's
pale and cold sweats.
And he's looking around, just
not.
He's clearly having the same trip that she's having, except he's having a terrible time.
And she's having a great time.
And she's having a great time. Yeah.
She's having the best time. A thing that you and I have briefly discussed off the podcast is that I think he's kind of agreeing to mate with Maya at the end of this conversation. This is one of our things that
we've talked about before. I don't think he agrees at all. And we can either get to that right now or we can get to that when it happens.
Let's get to it right now because it's already that conversation with him has happened and then now he's getting...
Yeah, we'll cut right to it. So Danny wins
She's the May Queen.
She's the May Queen. She wins. And she is kind of carried off.
She's given a gorgeous crown and a shawl. And my favorite CGI of the whole film is happening now. Yeah. The flowers are kind of breathing. And she sits in a throne with ivy on it, and that kind of moves with her. And nature is very fluid around her. There's stuff on the table that looks very ceremonial, not like food, but I think they do eat. And
no, they don't eat any of the gross stuff on the table. That's clearly just ceremony. Yeah, they don't eat that.
And a lot of that stuff that's nature kind of moves with her.
And none of the scenes where she's looking around sees any of that gross stuff on the table. It's all the nice stuff. She doesn't notice it at all. And meanwhile, he's sitting right in front of one of the more it's just the bones of an animal,
the head
with some of the meat still on, and it's
gross.
They're just out. It's not rotten or anything, but there's they're outside, so there's flies trying to come get it, and he's just having a bad time.
And he's everyone is in full white and very light tan things, and he's in a dark t-shirt. And
it should be said that they're sitting at one long table this time.
A straight table.
And so she's at the very end, so everybody can see her.
And she can see, everyone. And he's very starkly standing out because of his outfit and everything.
So they have a meal, and then she's taken away, blah, blah, blah. She goes on her thing.
Yeah, but my favorite part of the meal is that he cannot understand what the fuck is happening.
Oh, yeah, this is a great
And he
scene.
looks to the guy next to him. He's like, can you tell me what is going on? And the guy goes...
claps right in his face, and when he claps,
it river beats.
Everything shakes for Christian, and he's just his head retracts into himself like a turtle, and he's like, "Why did you do that?
Why would you do that?" I love it.
But anyway, let's get back to our argument. We must have it. She leaves for the next part of the ceremony, which is blessing the harvest, and he's still there. And literally everybody at the table turns to him in expectation while a line of flowers is laid out for him to go to the house.
By a woman, a flower girl.
Yeah. And literally everybody there, that's everybody who lives there, is at this table staring at him.
Except for the small group of women with the May Queen out doing her thing.
Yeah.
And so he kind of, the woman's like, come with me or whatever.
He's in the middle of a super bad trip, and he's told to go down the thing with everybody in the entire town staring directly at him.
So he does.
I don't think that implies, yes, he does. And I don't think that implies that he agreed to ahead of time. I think he is forced into it in a social situation.
I think he would have / did agree to do the whole sex thing with Maya. I don't think he knew the full extent of what it was going to entail, and I do think he is thoroughly having a terrible time with it. Like, he's having a bad trip. He's clearly drugged. I don't think it's implied that he agreed to it ahead of time. I think it's consensual necessarily on his end, but I think
it's definitely not consensual on his end. But I think that you're saying that, so the conversation is cut short with inside the house, and you're saying that during the part we didn't see, it's clear that he did sign up for it. I'm saying I think it was left open. Like, is it possible that I don't have to be part of it? Yeah. And then I think it just kind of came to an impasse there.
Yeah. I think with the director's cut where he, where she brings up that he could do it through an anthropological point of view, and stuff like that, makes it sound like he's more, and he brings up Danny, makes it me feel like more like that he was thinking about agreeing to it and then kind of did, and then did not know it was going to go down the way it went down, and with the drugs. I think in the original it is more ambiguous, but I think in the director's cut, I feel more so that he agreed.
I think it's just as ambiguous. It just gives you more context as to why he didn't fight it harder. Yeah. Like when he's in the situation where he's being pressured into it.
Yeah. So he gets led through the flowers into a, is that the same room that has all the books in it? No.
Yes, it is.
Okay. So it's kind of almost like their holy room, holy building. Mm-hmm. And he goes in, and there's a man with this weird thing covering his face, very ceremonial. And another guy opens up like a covered mug sort of like thing, and he's like, breathe in this smoke, and he does. And Christian is also like so thoroughly fucked up at this point. Like, he's so hunched, he's so cold sweats. They just robe him. They give him a ceremonial robe, and then they just kind of put him in this room. And inside the room is Maya laying on
a big pile of flowers.
A beautiful. She's naked. She has like a little half circle of naked women. Generally,
it's like 8 of them or something. Yeah. 8 or 10.
Slightly older women, like middle-aged women. Because the younger ones would be out with May Queen, excluding Maya.
And then you have the most uncomfortable sex scene of all time.
And Christian is so fucking out of it, and it's just very weird. I will say Ari Aster did this in Hereditary as well, with how uncomfortable nudity can be for people, particularly when it's not like traditionally pretty women. Yeah. So Maya is obviously very young and pretty, but all the other women are much more older, and they have like more realistic looking, but like not realistic, more
just regular naked people make people uncomfortable.
Yeah, and especially when you're not expecting it. He does it in Hereditary, and it's effective. I'm uncomfortable. Yeah, but I don't love that we're using this nudity in that way, particularly that tends to be more female nudity for him. But we do also get male nudity.
Yeah, you get
several male nudity. Yeah, but I feel like that nudity is more done to almost a comic effect or like a vulnerability effect, whereas with the women it feels, I don't know. I mean, I don't love it. It works. I understand it. I don't love it. They have sex. It is very uncomfortable. I hate it.
Yeah. And then, when it's over, he just stands up and they're just ignoring him. And he just he gets up and he runs outside naked.
With blood on his dick, because clearly Maya would have been a virgin.
Isn't she supposed to be not even 18?
Also probably that. She's just been approved to mate.
She was approved when she was 15, and we know this isn't that long.
Yeah, so she's probably 16, and he's
16
probably
or 17 or something.
22.
Yeah, he runs outside, and then it's visually very comical because he's running around with his dick jiggling everywhere,
and then he covers it with his hand, and he's very hunched again.
Yeah, and then skadoodles off like that.
And it's funny, but he's so vulnerable, and he's so I feel like that's the first time in the film I really feel for Christian, is because I'm that's so uncomfortable.
I think it's intentionally supposed to be weirdly visually very funny. Yeah. But emotionally very, very emotionally uncomfortable.
Yeah, and vulnerable.
Because and then while he's running around naked is when he starts discovering
he sees a leg in the garden, which is the worst thing this film does, because it doesn't make sense, because they're clearly hiding all the bodies in every other way. So why would there be a leg in the garden?
It's stupid and doesn't make any sense. Josh's leg is upside down in the garden with a rune carved onto the sole of his foot. Yeah. That's stupid, doesn't make any sense.
Worst part of the film.
Yeah. And then he runs into, like, the barn.
There's, like, chickens everywhere.
And Simon is in there with his, like... He's hanging from the ceiling and his lungs are splayed out behind him, like kind of like angel wings.
And they're...
Which is clearly just done for... And they're still moving because he's still alive.
Yeah.
It's clearly done just for the visual of it because it makes no sense in the story.
He has flowers over, like, covered instead of eyeballs now.
It's a purely visual scene.
It's really beautiful.
That makes no sense.
And then
stupid.
And then Christian gets drugged.
And then he gets some dust blown into his eyes. And
again with breathing. And again with drugs.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, our dear May Queen Danny...
having a great time still.
Having a fabulous time.
Blesses the harvest with a little ritual where they put, like, you know, the three main things. So they put some mutton, they put some grain, and they put an egg into the ground, and they just cover it up, and then they just they do
hold a torch,
do a little ceremony with her while she wears, like, this extravagant crown
crown is beautiful
of flowers and, like, a shawl of flowers, like a short shawl of flowers.
And she comes back, and then that is done, and she hears moaning, and it's from the building that Christian's having sex in. Because as Maya starts to moan, all the women do this, like, chanting with it. So it's like this weird rhythmic chanting, and she goes. Danny goes to look, and the girl that's with her is like, I don't think you should look. And she's like,
goes to do it anyways. I really don't think you should go.
And I think she even says, like...
Oh, she says, what is that? That's not for us.
That's not for us.
She goes to look. I don't think you should look.
And then she sees it, and she's just destroyed, heartbroken. Very similar to the crying we got when she lost her family.
She comes in the middle of them having sex.
She sees it through, like, a peephole. Or, like, a keyhole.
A
keyhole. And the women who were part of the May thing kind of go around her, and as she's running... to the room they all sleep in, and Danny's on the floor, like, crying and sobbing, and they're all huddled around her also doing the crying and sobbing, and they're like screaming, and it's this communal pain again.
It's the same, like, weird communal thing that it seems it's like very odd to us, but it's supposed to be established as, like, a thing they do in this community where like if somebody's having a super terrible time,
we're all having a terrible time. The
other people come and they have a terrible time too.
And then we get our dear May Queen, and she kind of comes to, and she still has her crown on, but now she's sitting in, like, a thing, and she's a full flower being.
She almost looks like a giant, like, slug made of flowers. It's so
gotta be so heavy.
It's such a long tail of flowers coming off of this huge flower dress. That, as she walks around,
you don't see her arms or her legs. It's just her head.
Yeah.
It's beautiful. Again,
this is another complaint. Another complaint I have is the flowers are all fake flowers, which is fine. But it's a shot in Ultra HD on a giant movie screen. So
these flowers are clearly fake.
Look at these clearly fake flowers.
And you get that with a lot of the flowers.
Which, for such a visually great movie, it
takes you slightly out of it.
Super takes you out of it the way.
Yeah. And then we get this massive decision.
Yeah.
So we then get kind of explained what the fuck has been going on with the Midsommar tradition, or with the big festival 90s thing. And that is that they, every 90 years, they sacrifice 9 people, and it is,
4 outsiders, 4, people who live there already, and then 1 person who is either an outsider or somebody who lives there, and that whether it's the outsider or the person who lives there already is chosen by the May Queen.
Yes. The choice is between Christian and just another guy in the community who we don't really care about or know. And there's this long moment, and Danny has not spoken this whole time. She's clearly just still deep in that pain of what she has seen.
And super fucking tripping.
Oh yeah, she's definitely fucked. And then we kind of see her answer.
Yeah, you don't hear her answer, but then the next scene is all the other 8 people, and then the 9th, which is Christian. So she has clearly chosen him, being loaded into this giant building full of, like, hay and kindling.
And Christian is still completely paralyzed, and he is sewn into. The bear we saw earlier has been now butchered, and he is sewn into this bear.
Yeah,
like alive.
He's wearing the bear skin like a suit.
Yeah. And they burn the building down with all the bodies in it. Christian is still alive. There are 2 volunteers from the community that are burned alive as well.
So the 4 people from the community are the the two that killed themselves already, the older couple, and then two living ones. One of them is Ingmar, and the other one is the guy,
the doctor,
the guy who gets really mad
about
at
the
Mark
ancestral
peeing on the tree. And that's why the line, it's a big week for him, is such a good line, and I don't know if that was in the original one. I want to think it is, but
I don't think it was.
I don't know if it was.
And then we see, like, kind of the ceremony of the dressing up is that, no, it's not the two people who killed themselves. Their corpses were burned. It's two people who died earlier in the year or something, and it's just kind of their torsos.
Oh, you're totally right.
And, like, one has been stuffed with, like, twigs down, like, where their mouth is and coming out as, like, arms, and the other one is stuffed with, like vegetables, right? It's very, like, tied to the harvest. You understand why it's a Midsommar thing.
Oh, you're totally right. You're totally right.
And, because, like, as jarring as the suicide thing is, that's not part of this tradition. That's just a thing they do.
Well, that's in the back of my head. I was thinking that's kind of an inconsistency. It's an inconsistency because I remembered it wrong.
Yeah, no,
Did you think it was the two old people too?
I did. I think the first time we saw it, but I think it's like the first thought I have, and then I have to remember the deeper, realistic thought. And
Whoopsies.
and then you see
0 out of 10 review. I would not listen to it.
And then you see Mark's kind of really just his face, and I guess maybe his torso,
because they already took his face off to do that,
and he's got
to do that really dumb scene.
Yeah, he's got like a jester hat on, and he's full of hay. You see Connie, who is dressed in that tinsel wear that the tree was, where the little kid was like not sacrificed. That's a cut scene, and now why Connie's body's that way makes more sense because she is actually being sacrificed to the goddess in that way.
Yeah.
You see Simon, who had the flowers done, and then you see Josh, who I think is again very vegetable-y.
Yeah, I can't remember how he was.
And they burn the thing down, and Danny's like still in this flower get up.
Yeah, and she's just standing out there, and then as it burns down, the two conscious guys from the town, one of them starts screaming because he's on fire. Like, he's in there on purpose, but now he's on fire.
And that's
and you can, you can't really help yourself. And then the whole town is screaming with him, in like the solidarity thing. And Danny's just kind of standing there still. And then the very last scene of the movie
is she smiles, like a small little smile.
And that's the movie.
I love this movie.
There's a lot that I like about it. It does a few things that, while they don't completely devalue the rest of the movie,
are a detriment.
Just those few little like horror trope things, like finding the leg in the garden and the guy wearing the face, are so out of place in this narrative that just doesn't make any sense. But other than that, solid all the way through.
Yeah.
I don't want to watch it ever again.
I
watched it one too many times.
I want to watch it again. As uncomfortable as so much of it is, there's so much of it I love. There's so much of the scenes I love.
Oh, it just makes me have a bad day for the rest of the day.
Yeah, I understand. I think a lot of people feel that way. I don't.
So yeah, if you ever just want to have a bad day, watch it.
But it is a really good movie. It's a fantastic film. Danny is played by Florence Pugh, and she's fucking phenomenal.
Yeah, we talked about this in the car on the way back from watching the extended cut, and yeah, we all agree. Pretty much, if it was pretty much any other actress, I don't think any one of them could have done as good a job as she did. Her face is perfect for the role.
She's so expression. You see every little emotion in her face and her eyes. She's beautiful. But not like in a way that is like no real human looks like that.
She's pretty, but not distractingly pretty.
Yeah, she's very pretty. So you understand, why Pele likes her and all of that. And this is Ari Aster's second film. The first one, of course, is Hereditary, and he's one of the people that when he's going to come out with something, I'm kind of here for it immediately, regardless of what it is.
So far, he's proven himself that he makes good movies. They're not perfect all the way through. He's going to screw it up a couple of times on the way through. Just like Hereditary has some really inconsistent, weird parts in it,
but they feel so unique and interesting and more thought out than kind of what the generic horror movie is.
Yeah, no, I'm not saying this.
No, I know. I think that's why we're here for him.
Yeah, for sure. Makes something that you probably never experienced before.
Yeah, and Are you ready to rate 1 out of 10?
Yeah, I'm ready to rate.
You want to go first?
I'd give it I want to give it an 8.
I'm going to give it a 9.5. I think it's really good.
Okay. I would consider an 8 a really good score.
No, it is. I really love it.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, if you haven't seen Midsommar and you listen to this, I think you should still go see it if you think you can sit through it, because it's really good. It's something that you will not be able to see every day.
Yeah. It's a unique film experience. Very good.
Although I will say I have heard that it takes very heavily after a different film.
Wicker Man.
Yes, Wicker Man, which we haven't seen.
Mm-hmm.
So at some point maybe we'll watch that and review it and be able to come at that from a viewpoint of having seen Midsommar.
I'd be interested to know how many tropes it actually actually shares with it, or whether it's just the fact that it has the same frame story is why people compare it so much.
Yeah, so look forward to that. I think we'll end up having to do that because I'm very interested in it.
Eventually. All right.
But yeah,
thanks for listening.
Stay tuned for our next review coming up in just a minute.
All right, welcome to part 2.
Today we're going to review
Umbrella Academy, which...
the Netflix TV show.
Yeah, the Netflix... not the comic, we haven't read that yet, but we're going to.
And yeah, we're both super interested in. So that's a slight spoiler ahead of time if you're paying attention, that we probably enjoyed this.
Yeah, because we need more. It's like when you watch an anime arc that just comes out and you're like, well, fuck, I'm not going to wait for more, I have to go read the manga. This is like that for comics.
Yeah. Umbrella Academy came out on Netflix, the series, earlier this year. So we're not...
Flew completely under the radar.
For us.
But I was kind of interested in it, and I looked at the only thing I ever heard about it was one negative review. So I was like, damn, it looks so interesting. But I heard it was bad. You know how that can happen to you?
Yeah. The negative stuff gets stuck in your head way more than the good stuff does.
Well, I didn't hear anything about it except for one negative review. I don't know where it came from. I was just
madness.
Damn, they tried to do this interesting sounding show, but they did it bad. Well, that's a shame.
Turns out they didn't do it bad. The graphic novels it's based on were written by Gerard Way, who is the lead singer of My Chemical Romance.
Which is crazy.
Which was, I don't think a band that either of us were super into, but we liked. Like, if a song came on, like Black Parade came on, I was like, yeah. But I never, listened to an album or anything.
Yeah, I don't really know any songs by them. I mean, yeah, the Black Parade.
When I was a young boy.
It
was super pop. That was on the radio when
I'm
we
Not
were
Okay,
younger.
I Promise. It was, their first hit.
Yeah.
They
were on the radio sometimes, and when I was younger, that's where I got my music. I got it from the radio.
So we were definitely aware of MCR, and I had friends who were big MCR fans, so I knew a little bit more about Gerard Way. But I don't know, I always think it's really cool when someone who's known for something does a different thing, especially when they do it well. And so while I can't speak to how good the graphic novel is written, he clearly has some brilliant ideas that the show was able to work with at a minimum.
Yeah. I don't think anything about the plot line is genre bending to be surprising or great. It's all the genre tropes, but just done really well.
Yeah, and
I really appreciate that.
Yeah, tropes exist for a reason. It's because they work. It's because they, get the reaction that they need to get. Also, just the acting in the show is really good.
Yeah,
I never noticed the acting, I feel like, generally, which is a good sign.
That's a good, acting and sound design are two things that you should never notice. Yeah, at least according to other people who are in the profession, you should never notice those two things.
Yeah.
Never noticed the acting, never noticed the sound design, so they must have both been good.
Yeah. While this is obviously a review show, and we do often say, we're going to include some spoilers, we are going to try to make this pretty much spoiler-free beyond the first episode, because if you haven't seen the show and you're still listening anyway, you definitely should still go watch this show.
Mm-hmm.
So we don't want to spoil it for you.
Absolutely. I'll go ahead and say the show doesn't take any twists that are like genre-defining, mind-bending shit, but you should really watch this show. This is how a quote-unquote superhero show should be done.
I get that, yeah. I don't disagree with that at all.
Hope always complains that I hate TV shows.
It's because he will start a show and abandon it very quickly, and at that point I am invested, and I do not have the time to watch all the shows you abandoned me with.
If I watch 3 to 5 episodes and I still think the show is just not doing it for me, I can't invest the time to continue. After episode 1 or 2 of this show, I knew I was in.
Yeah, and I do want to defend myself here, because I understand why you feel that way, but it's that it honestly...
It leaves you in an awkward place.
Also, only 2 shows a year generally you finish.
Are that good? Maybe only 2 shows a year that I'm exposed to are that good. I wish I could be exposed to all the shows.
So I think we're going to go at this a little bit like we went at Mass Effect 3, where we're going to focus more so on the characters and a little bit less on their development, because the characters are what make the show, generally.
Yeah. And to just explain the plot really wouldn't be much of a review. It would just be a spoiler with no real valuable review clue. So let's hit the characters, and then we'll kind of leave it off at that. And I think that will be good enough to explain why we love the show without ruining the show for anybody who hasn't watched it.
Yeah. So the opening scene is actually really good, and it's a cold open, and I love me a cold open. It's these 2 people in Russia. I believe it's Russia.
The 2 teenagers.
Yeah.
That's a great cold open.
And they're at
I forgot about that almost.
Yeah, they're at a public pool, and they're, like, sitting at benches near each other, but not next to each other, but they're, like, smiling and flirting.
It's a boy and a girl.
Yeah. And then he gets up and kind of walks over to her and, like, I think maybe goes in for a kiss, and she denies him, and then she kisses his cheek, and then she jumps in the pool. And there's, like, people practicing, what's that swimming called?
It's like aqua aerobic.
They're doing a class thing, and she jumps in the pool when she shouldn't, and then her head pops up as she's kind of getting fussed at by, like, the teacher there, and she starts screaming, and you see that she's bleeding, and she gives birth. But when she jumped in that pool, because we could see her in a bathing suit, she was clearly not pregnant. All of a sudden, she's
fully pregnant.
9 months pregnant.
Gets pulled out of the pool.
Water broken.
And gives birth to a child. And then you get this great, like...
narration.
Just little narration. This show, in the first episode especially, knows where to cut and not cut. It just gives you boom, 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 and it
feels like smart writing.
Almost comedy. Like,
oh, no, it's super funny.
Especially when they get to Hargreaves.
Yeah. So, what we find out is on that day, I think it's like 50 women.
It's a lot.
Yeah, all over the world, I think it's about 50 women give birth, and they were not pregnant before. And so all these babies are spontaneous. And this man, Reginald Hargreaves... is insanely wealthy, and he's like, I want all of these kids.
And then, boom, it cut. He got 7. Or however many?
Yeah, he got 7.
Yeah.
And that's such a funny cut.
How much for the baby?
Not for... What?
But obviously he gets some of them like that. He gets
7 of them.
Because he gets 7.
Which I will say, and this isn't touched in on the show, so it's not a spoiler, but I hope it is a spoiler in the sense that I hope this does come up, is if... The whole thing is that these children who were spontaneously born and created have superpowers? Does that mean that there are another 43 people out there like them?
That's why I think the show might have a long and successful future.
If they do it right.
At the very least, a long future. I'm hoping a successful future. Because this first season that really bites into this concept, really great.
Yeah. Yeah. So our first character that we just mentioned is Reginald Hargreaves, and he's kind of the quote-unquote dad.
You were never just kids. You were meant to save the world.
I do believe they call him their dad.
And the first baby to be born, I think, is implied as Vanya, correct?
Yes, Vanya is the one we saw, like, the mother give birth to. So Reginald is super wealthy. We find out that he's super distant. We get a lot of flashbacks with him because, again, we're not spoiling anything that isn't in the first episode. He dies.
So this character, he does have a lot more depth later, but at least for what they give to you in the very beginning, is just the way he looks is the way he is. The type of person that would wear a monocle unironically is the type of person he is.
And a perfectly tailored fitted suit.
Absolutely.
Great style.
This is like such a great character trope, and they play him perfectly seriously and perfectly comically equally.
Yeah. And he creates for them a robot mother figure, who they call Mom, who is named Grace.
Boys will be boys.
And she is beautiful, very, very like 50s mom, like perfectly dressed.
What's that movie where they talk...
Stepford Wives?
Stepford Wives. She is exactly a Stepford wife.
But she's also really caring and like is trained in all the first aids because, again, these kids are essentially superheroes. And so, they are going to go fight crime, and that means that they could get hurt. She's the only one that seems to give a shit about the dad is very removed from them. Mm-hmm. Like they eat lunch in silence together.
Everybody who knows him always says he loved you in his own way, and none of the kids can parse what that could possibly mean
because he just feels like he didn't care.
Yeah. So he made a robot that does actually show that they care. The robot cares for them more than he ever does.
Yeah.
But he made this robot.
So it's his way of showing he cares. It's just but as a child you can't see that as a child.
Absolutely not.
And so if Grace had died instead of the father dying and that's what brought them together, it would have been a completely different show. I don't know how a robot would die necessarily, but they all have daddy issues from him. And while maybe there's some issues with their mom in the sense that she's a robot and how do you deal with that, that's not really an issue. That's their mother.
As an adult, how do you come to terms with the fact that your mother doesn't even actually have a personality?
Yeah.
Or at least not what we perceive as a personality. Yeah. She is programmed to feel like she has these emotions. She's
programmed to love you, so she doesn't have the free will to. So she's not choosing to love you.
Yeah. Which is something that they touch on a lot as well. They actually touch on a lot of,
Yeah. They touch on a lot of deep issues.
Inexplicably deep issues. Yeah.
A lot of deep issues that they touch on, but I don't feel like are ever being brooded over and drawn out too much, excluding maybe a little bit of the daddy issues.
A bad show would have these characters brooding over these issues.
Yeah.
A good show has them be issues that they deal with like an actual reasonable human being.
Which means often that you push it aside because, they all haven't seen each other in a long time.
How do you deal with issues when you're an adult? You push it aside.
You ignore them generally, or you take a lot of therapy. The other thing that Reginald has kind of, quote-unquote, created to help their lives is Pogo, who is maybe my favorite character, honestly.
Your brother is missing, and this is how you rise to the occasion. Take your nonsense elsewhere.
Yeah, he's really great through and through. He's great in his non-serious parts. Mm-hmm. He's almost always serious because he's a serious character, but he's super great in those. He's
clearly, charming and sweet and is very devoted to Reginald, their father, above all else, but does really care for these kids. And I'm saying kids, they're all probably our age now.
Adults now. Yeah. Well, they're older than us now.
Yes, you're right.
They're all
30-ish.
almost 30.
Yeah.
They're 30 or almost 30 in that range.
Yeah. Pogo is also a talking, standing on 2 feet.
He's a chimpanzee.
He's a chimpanzee. I was not 100% sure.
Mm-hmm.
But he's not. He's dressed up he's dressed in people clothes, and I think he has a cane because he's clearly older.
Well, chimpanzees don't live as long as people, so. In the time between he was a young chimpanzee and then the kids came along and now the kids are adults, now he's an elderly chimpanzee. So he's very much wants to be the well-educated, and it very much is actually, the well-educated, mature adult.
He is probably the most aware of everything that's actually happening than any other single character.
He's more of a patron to the family than the father is.
Yeah. And again, he clearly cares about them so much. Mm-hmm. And they also love Pogo. At some point, I think someone snaps at him.
Not only do they love him, they respect him.
Yes. Someone snaps at him, and they're like, "What? Why would you ever yell at Pogo?"
At one point, two of the main characters are tussling over they're having a fight over like a real problem, and Pogo is like, I will not take this in my house.
Yeah.
And both of them stop fighting, apologize to Pogo, and leave.
Yeah. So there's a level of command and respect there that they probably showed their father, but it's a complete...
But feel for Pogo.
Yeah. And then we'll get into the quote-unquote kids, which again are not children. But we also see them a lot in flashbacks where they are different ages, from more like 5 or 6 to like early teenager-y kind of ages.
And the movie, it really does feel like an extended movie. The show starts with 5 of them because 2 are missing.
Yeah.
And you'll find out later why.
Mm-hmm. And we won't ruin that. So literally the first one you meet in the show is
the first one you see is
Vanya.
I have been left out of everything for as long as I can remember. And I used to think it was Dad's fault, but he's dead.
Who is played by Ellen Page. And I'm always kind of here for Ellen Page.
Yeah, I like Ellen Page as an actress.
Yeah. I've never seen anything with her where I'm like, she's not...
in, though, lately?
I don't know. I think she's kind of out living her life a little bit more now.
I mean, good for her.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe she just chooses to be in good stuff.
Yeah.
Because I don't think I've seen her in anything bad.
No, I don't think so either. Or if I see her in something bad, it's not that she's bad, it's that other shit's bad in the movie.
That's true. That's true.
So Vanya, is like a violin player, and she has a style of fashion that I really love. It's kind of a boxy and utilitarian. And she has a jacket she wears, especially early on, that's like black, and there's like leather
which
sleeves.
I didn't notice, and you brought this up literally the first 3 or so episodes. You're like, I love this jacket she keeps wearing.
I want it.
I have to look at it every time. You're like, yes, that's the jacket she was wearing.
I love this jacket.
Because you picked up on it so hard. You're like, I love this style.
Because I want it. I want one. Ellen Page, call me.
I don't think Ellen Page has that.
She'd probably get it.
Ellen Page can get it.
I will. At one point, so Ellen Page wears kind of long sleeve shirts, and a lot of pants. She's very like not skin revealing. Her Vanya isn't. At one point, she is in the bathtub, and you can see her arms, and she has like crazy big guns for how small of a person Ellen Page is, to the point that I was like low-key distracted during that scene.
It has nothing to do with the show.
It's so distracting.
Ellen Page is jacked.
Yeah. That's it. That's all we have to say.
Yeah, this goes nowhere with the show, but Ellen Page?
Jacked.
God damn, girl.
Good for her.
You jacked.
She looks great. There are 2 females of the 7 and 5 males. The other female is Allison.
I mean, from the time I was little, I used it to get everything I wanted. With Dad, with my career.
I didn't know at first if I was super interested in it, and I kind of loved her later on.
Yeah.
She's gorgeous. She's
Do we want to give away any of their powers, or should we wait?
I think we should wait.
Because such a great reveal of the few opening episodes is what their powers are.
Yeah, I don't want to give them away.
And like how not all powers are created equal.
Yeah. Some people have powers that are like literally insanely strong, and some people have powers that are like, that's cool, but it feels almost more like a parlor trick.
I know. Yeah, exactly right. And some people take advantage of their powers way better than other characters.
Yeah. Which I think can be seen as a moral issue, and I think that is the moral issue for some of them.
Yeah, they do touch on the moral issue of being superhuman.
Yeah.
I mean, is it moral to continue being superhuman and taking advantage of that?
And not only are they superhuman, but the Umbrella Academy is what this group of kids were called. And they were known. They were famous. There were like comics written about them and figurines sold. So I think their identities could have possibly been... I think their identities were covered when they were children, but I think Allison's identity...
But not well.
You know, by the shitty mask sort of thing.
Yeah.
But I think not everyone knows...
They wore domino masks, and that's it.
Is that what they're called?
The little masks that just go over your eyes, those are called domino masks.
Oh, cool. I didn't know that.
I have no clue why, because I'm not that educated.
Allison has some family issues more than anyone outside of the just brother and sisters style.
It feels like she's the only one that made a family outside.
Yes. Actually, she's kind of the only one who... outside of this group of people has someone really important to her, excluding like one other character.
2 other people have romantic interests?
Yeah. She's really great.
And they're not good at it.
No. Allison's great. Her power is super, super interesting. Not a power I would have thought of, I think.
That's not a power you think of in the regular, yeah.
Next up...
Can we diverge for a second?
Yeah.
And tell the listeners to go to powerwiki.com. You hit the random button twice, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And those are your 2 powers forever. You can't re-roll them. And see how happy or unhappy you are with your 2 powers.
Please leave whatever you get in the comments, and you can also tell us how you feel.
Yeah, if you're listening to this on one of the mediums that has comments, please leave your 2 powers, because those are so fun. Especially how some of them interact or don't interact.
Yeah.
This has nothing to do with the show, but this is a fun thing that I've done ever since I was...
High school?
Yeah, young, very young, rolled for them, and then, like, occasionally bring it up with friends. And, like, all of us who rolled for it when we were super young, we still remember what our 2 stupid things
What are your powers?
Mine is bibliokinesis. So, like, book kinesis. So, like, if you read anything, you'll remember it, and you can control things inside books. Kind of a good one, kind of a bad one, kind of mixed. And then the other one is another kind of milquetoast. It's full toxin immunity.
Okay.
So, like... both good stuff, but like when things in vulnerability are on the table,
weak
compared to that. But that's the great thing about randomness.
Yeah, that's great. I love that. I remember doing that with you a long time ago.
Yeah,
I don't remember what mine were.
You don't remember what you got?
No,
I guess
I'm
it
sorry.
didn't make a big impact on you.
It might have been an age thing. Next,
you are much more mature and cool.
That's not what I meant. I just meant I was like 19 when I did it. The next character the next character is Luther.
4 years up there watching and waiting because he said the world needed me. 4 years of nothing but soy paste and processed air because I was naive enough to believe that dads don't lie to their kids.
Who is they all go by numbers by Reginald. He doesn't call them by their names, which is annoying.
Which is super impersonal to treat children like that.
Again, not a good father figure. So Luther is number 1. And his character is, I think, my least favorite of the main cast. And not because he's, I don't know.
Really?
I think he's a little boring and he's a little paladin type or something, and I'm just not into that.
Ooh, no.
You say it.
He is built to be that character. But he super turns on that character to be more understanding. And then even late in the show, he makes decisions that are very hateable under some circumstances. But it's like, you can't really say he's wrong.
No, I just don't agree about how he goes about some stuff. And early on, I found him really boring.
I don't know. Yeah, it's like when you have a childhood like that, maybe you don't have any choice other than to be boring.
No one else is boring.
But nobody else had the same childhood as him. Nobody else has the exact same childhood.
That's true. I will say this, and this is not necessarily a spoiler. He has some prosthetic pieces on at some point, and while I don't necessarily hate the way they look, I kind of hate the way they look.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Let's talk about that for a second.
It seems like there's a really obvious line of demarcation, even though it's not like a visible line, where he ends and the prosthetic starts. And I think it's really hard to make that character look good and realistic, and I feel like they went about it in a way I don't love.
It was supposed to be intentional. These lines of demarcation where parts of his body look different than other parts of his body. And it's non-subtle, and it's very like, this part ends. But then they give an explanation as to why parts of his body look like that. Mm-hmm. And that just doesn't fit with that at all.
No, I don't love it. I think that's my biggest critique of this entire show. I love where they're
going with that.
Yeah.
I love where they're going with that.
I'm interested to see where they go with it. That's my biggest probably critique of the whole show, is like his kind of, that whole thing.
They don't do it well. And
And for a show that does so much well, when you do something not great, it stands out.
When we read the comic version, we'll get to know whether that's a conceptual problem or whether that's a visual effect problem.
Yeah. So, stay tuned for that.
Don't stay tuned for that, because we're not going to give you a follow-up.
We might. Why not? We can review the graphic novels.
Episode 50. That's when we're doing it. Okay. Graphic novel.
Next up is Diego.
He was a bad person and a worse father. The world's better off without him.
Diego.
My name is number 2.
Who, I kind of hated at first as well. And then I really liked him.
You had a full reverse. I could tell that just watching the show, you had a full reversal on this character.
Yeah. Yeah. I think he's really unlikable at first. And then he starts to make a lot more sense and become much more likable. Mm-hmm. It seems like
a few of the characters don't make any sense as who they are until
you understand them.
Yeah. Strong, which is strong
writing. That's good character development and writing. I think he is one of the people. Vanya is kind of on the outskirts of a lot of the family stuff, and we're not going to get into why or anything, but she is, and it feels like Diego is one of the ones who really tries to not involve her, but more protect her.
Really? No,
I'm wrong.
I disagree.
I'm wrong.
Yeah, he's specific as like, why are you here?
Yeah, he's rude. That's probably why I didn't like him initially. And then Klaus.
It's just like old times. Best funeral ever.
Kind of one of my standout favorites throughout the whole show as well.
He's great. Is he a good actor, though?
Yeah, so he's played by Robert Sheehan, who played a very kind of similar type of character as far as like their personality in the show Misfits, which is a UK show.
Which is also a good show.
Especially the earlier seasons, like I think the first 3 are really good.
That show went the way that I'm nervous about this show
That show went really off the rails. But, so Klaus is kind of floaty and a drug addict. I think that's not a spoiler. And he seems...
The first scene you get with him is him being in rehab.
Yeah, him essentially, yeah.
And blowing it off.
Yeah. And then, like, when he leaves rehab, the guy's like, try not to see you again, huh?
Something like that,
yeah. I think Klaus is one of the people who... Klaus and Allison seem to be kind of the nicest of Vanya, who was on the outskirts and a lot of stuff. Klaus is never, like, defending her, but he's also like, I don't know why you need to be a dick about it.
Yeah, you're right.
And Allison never kind of defends her to the group, but Allison is like, more nicer to her and actually wants to be, like, a sister to her on, like, a one-on-one, like, way. Like, they have a lot of one-on-one scenes that are nice.
Which is one of the dynamics of the show that comes up a lot, is, like, they're not even raised in, like, a true family setting, and they're not related at all. Mm-hmm. But, like...
They call each other family and sisters.
They're kind of family and sisters and brothers, but it's, like... That's one of the difficult things about it.
Yeah. His power is super interesting, and I think so much of the show...
Klaus's.
Klaus's power is super interesting, and I think if Klaus didn't exist, / his power wasn't in the show, that show would be so different.
It'd be so boring.
It would be so boring. He's so fun to watch do whatever. He's very floaty and silly, and
his power is it's so not a superhero power.
No.
It's not a super anybody power. No. It's not something you would think of in a comic book at all.
Yeah. I think Klaus comes off initially as like a very one-note character, as not giving a shit about anything, just wanting to get high. And he has, I think, some of the best character development.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then, really briefly, I want to touch on Ben.
Hey, life isn't supposed to be easy. Life is hard.
Who is one of the missing kids when the show starts. So that's all we're going to say about him because, yeah.
He's a missing kid. Well, in episode 1, you find out what his power is. And he has a very powerful power.
Ben's power feels... I feel like Luther looks kind of Jekyll and Hyde-ish. Mm-hmm. But I feel like Ben is actually more Jekyll and Hyde.
Oh, wow. Yeah, you're right. You're not wrong.
If you're going to go about that kind of Jekyll and Hyde story in 2 different ways, I think that's interesting.
And from their childhood things, he clearly is just not into it. He's the least into it of all of them.
Yeah, Ben doesn't want to be here. I don't think Ben likes his power or likes having it or having to do it.
Does he have the strongest power?
I don't want to debate that.
We can't debate it with anything, but just yes or no, do you think he has the strongest power? Because I'm going to say yes, I think he...
No.
Ooh, top 2.
No.
Really?
Top 3.
Okay.
Next, and who was missing at the beginning of the first episode, is number 5, who is just called number 5.
I don't think that I'm better than you, number 1. I know I am. I've done unimaginable things you couldn't even comprehend.
He never gets it. He's the only child that never gets a name.
If he has a name, they never call him that. They only call him 5
No,
number 5.
because I think the implication is once they reach adult age, they choose their own names, and that's why they all have names.
No, because they call each other their names when they're kids, I think.
Really? Why doesn't he have a name?
I don't know. I might be wrong.
He's one of the most interesting characters. He's
my actual favorite character.
He is what the whole plot is rolling off of him.
5 drives the plot of the show. He drives the movement of a lot of the show. He's the catalyst for everything.
Yeah.
And the acting for 5 is, I think, insanely good. And if someone doesn't give him an award, I'm going to be mad.
So, this is only a tiny spoiler, but only if you read into it. He's the only child actor that stays a child actor through the whole thing.
He's the only character who stays a child throughout the whole thing.
Yeah, that's what I meant.
All child actors to child actors. But yeah, so like largely throughout the show, while we get flashbacks, most of them are adults. 5 is a child essentially the entire series.
Mm-hmm. And how do you play a child actor in a cast of adult actors and still be the most impacting character?
And the most interesting.
How do you even pretend... How, as a child, do you act like you're a character like that? Yeah. How do you have this emotional maturity when you, as a human being, don't?
It's incredible. It's incredible acting. So because of 5, we are introduced to some other characters through kind of 5, and that's the whole plot of the show. And that is Cha-Cha and Hazel, who are going to be grouped together because they are a duo.
Go ahead, just say it.
What?
No point keeping it bottled up. Or to just give you heartburn, and I gotta listen to you complain about that too.
Smells like cat piss. First they cut our per diem and then our dental, and now we don't even get our own rooms. Where does it end?
We can't give any spoilers as for who they are, but just imagine this duo of characters that have their own plot line that ties in at some point.
Cha-Cha is played by Mary J. Blige, and she does a really great job.
I have no idea who Mary J. Blige is, but this actor, great.
She's a musician.
In the show, she's an actor, and she does it great.
She's really good.
And her counterpart, Hazel, who I don't know. Do you know who that actor is?
No, I did not write him down.
Yeah,
I only wrote down the 3 names because I recognize them.
Yeah. You say number 5's your favorite character? Hazel's my favorite character in the whole show.
Hazel's definitely one of the best characters. He has such a great face. I feel like you see everything in his face.
Absolutely. We have a friend called Big Eric, and he looks so much like Big Eric.
Yeah, Hazel and Big Eric feel different as far as kind of people go, but similar as far as like how they look.
They both have a great, big, enormous heart inside them.
And then last of the characters we're going to talk about is the Handler.
What's meant to be is meant to be. That's our raison d'etre.
Who just kind of goes by the Handler.
Who is that actress?
She's great.
Do you know that actress?
No, I didn't write it down.
I almost recognize her face. Wow, she's great.
She's great, and a really interesting fashion taste that I kind of love watching.
Yeah.
Another character that I feel like could be a nothing or just a really one note, and while I do feel like she's generally very one note, you do get subtle hints of her being deeper than that.
And it's only because what she represents is so far beyond what we can really understand, you know?
And what, like, the show is giving us knowledge of.
Well, yeah, because the show doesn't give us a lot about what she stands for, but she's such a strong character, and yeah, that actress really kills it.
Yeah. And that's essentially the cast. There are a couple of other people, obviously, in the show, but no one that we are really going to talk about.
Yeah. We really only want to just, like, give you a teaser for why we think this show is good. We want to review it without ruining it, because as far as we know, this show kind of flew under the radar.
At least for a lot of people we know.
Yeah, especially for people we know, which I think is kind of unfair to this show.
Yeah. But we do know that it clearly did pretty well because Netflix picked it up for a second season pretty goddamn quickly.
Especially in time for it to end with a teaser. So this is one of those rare things where season 1 can be open and shut, but set up for a season 2 that you care about.
Yeah.
You're not on a cliffhanger, but you know there's a season 2 that you really care that's coming.
Definitely.
Am I right with that?
You're totally right. I think that one of the other things to kind of talk about in the show that is going to be a good recommendation is that there are like 3 or 4 scenes that are music heavy, and
I forgot about those. Wow.
The first one happens in maybe the first or second episode, and it was so jarring the first time because it's just one song. They're all in like this big mansion.
We don't hate it though. Let's say we don't hate it,
but it's really jarring because you're not ready for it yet. It's your first time experiencing it in the show, and it's just like this one song is playing, and they're all in the big mansion they kind of grew up in, and they're all listening to this same song and kind of doing their own little dance to it in different parts of the house, like in their bedrooms and stuff. And it's a really great. I think watching a character dance is a really good telling point of who they are.
You're so not wrong about that. But what a wild thing to say.
It's totally right.
Just because you're right doesn't mean it's not wild to say.
And so that is, I think, a really quick way of figuring out who those characters are. In a very quick moment.
You're so right.
Like Ellen Page is like Vanya's very kind of like low key and quiet, and is used to being in the background and not the center of attention. And so her moves are very like not far out there. She's not outstretching her limbs really far and stuff like that. And then you could see Allison, who's really pretty and dresses amazing. God, her clothes are great. She's like a feather boa in her childhood room. I think she uses, and like it's a really great scene.
Fucking Klaus is the one that should have the feather boa.
I think he might also have a feather boa.
Oh shit! Yeah, the way they all dance is great.
One of the next music scenes is 2 of the characters, and they're like in a public park or something, and they decided to like dance together.
Yeah, and they bring music in hard on that.
They bring music in, but they're also like in different clothes, and the world changes around them, and it's really magical. And I love movie magic like that.
And it so does not fit into the rest of the series.
All the music scenes are really amazing, but they feel a little out of place. But I don't mind.
It's so intentionally out of place.
Yeah,
that it's like you're not supposed to think that this fits in. This is almost like you just like looking at how these characters are,
or how they see the world or the moment.
Exactly.
And that's really lovely, and a really nice way to see kind of deeper into the characters.
Mm-hmm.
So I think, long story short, we really loved the show, Ian in particular.
And Hope loves shows way more than I do. Once again, I bring up the fact that I just can't get into shows very easily. And that's just, it's not necessarily a dig on all shows that are out there right now, but for me personally, I don't think there are very many shows that resonate with me right now.
Mm-hmm. I can understand that. Well, I can't understand that, but I can understand that you feel that way.
There's so much good media out there, and in my opinion, TV shows right now are not making the cut. Largely. I
think that, yes, you are right. I think we have so many TV show choices right now that for a show to really stand out and be good, it has to really nail it. And so we are kind of in a golden age of media.
Yeah, and that's what You're exactly right. And that's what makes me feel like I'm being a little unfair by treating shows that are good but not great the way I do. But at the same time...
There's only so much time.
Mm-hmm.
And how do you want to spend that time? I understand that.
I only have so many hours, and I'd love to spend them on shows that I think are legitimately above average great shows.
Yeah.
And I gave this one a chance. I didn't think it was going to be good because I was lied to by the internet.
By one person.
By something on the internet. It's so easy to be discouraged.
Mm-hmm.
Turned out to be amazing.
Yep. So, what do you rate The Umbrella Academy 1 through 10? Season 1.
All right, who wants to go first?
I'm going to give it an 8.
I'm also going to give it an 8. This is the first time that we've lined
never
up
perfectly agreed. Yeah, that's really great. So 8 out of 10, that's a 4 out of 5 if you're going to do a split down the middle.
8 out of 10 is a well above average rating.
So, go watch The Umbrella Academy. And we will see you on our next review. Thanks for listening.
Thanks, everybody.